Hi, I'm Amira.
And I'm Elissa.
And welcome to another episode of Sage Takes Time. We don't want to say it at the same time.
We don't?
No.
Oh, was that just
Just
me?
say your name. Okay,
fine.
one more time. Okay.
Elissa.
Yeah.
Also known as Freiha, also known as eBay, EC.
eBay.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It was my high school rap name.
Wow, we need another episode. Okay. From the top. Hi. Bit. Scotty. Elissa, game face. Oh no, we're going to lose our
the name
friend.
of the show,
Okay.
Scotty.
Hi, I'm Amira.
I'm Elissa.
And welcome to another episode of Sage Takes Time. I know you wanted to say something. You're
I was
like,
going to say, today we're talking about this shit.
oh yeah, let me say it. Today we're talking about the privilege of having purpose over profit and media, the media landscape, monetizing media challenges all over the world, and what we do at Womena, the difficult choices we make.
Yeah, we're going to be really transparent in this episode, maybe share a little bit more than we should.
TMI.
But it's the truth. So tune in.
Friends is just like timeless for me. It's a comfort. It's like comfort food.
Yeah.
It's like a burger.
Did you ever watch Different Strokes?
No.
Any of those like family Boy Meets World? Any of the
Oh,
Disney
of course.
Channel ones?
Boy Meets World. Family Matters.
Family Matters.
And Charles in charge. Charles in charge of our day and our nights.
Oh, I got it for you. Sister.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Of course.
Yeah, classic.
Sister. Never knew how much I miss you.
Yeah, because we watch TV,
A lot.
not streaming.
I
It was just
watched a
always
lot
on
of
TV.
Unsupervised television.
Oh, me too. I was home alone a lot.
Me too.
Love my parents, but I was home alone a lot at like a weird age, like at 8. It's really young, right?
I remember being 9 years old and being like, there's a Scooby-Doo marathon all weekend.
Yeah.
And that's all I did. There's the Arab culture thing, but actually we learned a lot from American 80s and 90s sitcoms.
Oh yeah, that's where our references come from also.
Is it a good thing? Well, I don't
It's
know.
not a bad thing. I feel
Yeah.
like it gives us a global perspective.
Yeah.
But I also got the 90s Egyptian like drama series and like masrahiyat and stuff.
What's a masrahiyat?
Like a play, like a comedy play.
Oh, okay.
Right? Does it have to be comedy?
What are they?
Like شاهد ما شافش حاجة, like the Adil Imam early day stuff.
Literally, so not my
Really?
reference points. Yeah, I'm on a different planet.
Yeah, no, we would go get like videotapes, like VHS tapes from the Arabic store in Queens, New York, and then go back to where we lived, which was like 2 hours away. And we'd just have them on repeat. My parents would play it on repeat. All the shows and like series like Ra'fat al-Haggan and stuff, you probably don't know one. This is like an Egyptian spy that went to Israel in the 70s.
TV. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But you watched that as a kid?
Yeah, it's a classic.
Oh, of course it is. Sounds like a classic, like a feel-good family classic.
It's very nationalistic in a good way. Ish. Not distorted at all. No, I was too young to understand like whether I was being super whitewashed or not. It was just what was on TV.
Yeah.
I was like a 9-year-old. Like, don't expect me to have that level of awareness, you know?
Yeah. But there were some episodes like Saved by the Bell.
The drugs episode.
The drugs episode with the glue.
Cried.
She's allergic. Not she's allergic. She's addicted to glue.
She was addicted to something.
Jessie, she's like the A student, and
she was the wild child, and she had curly hair.
And she had curly hair
because she's wild.
But she's also the straight A student who's like with the star football or wrestling guy with Asa
But that was
Slater.
like the say no to drugs era.
Yeah, but they couldn't actually say drugs, so it's not that she's addicted to a drug. She's addicted to something.
Glue. Was it glue or like marker? Maybe she was weird.
Yeah, and it was a thing that was like some on the borderline of like PG rated, but it's about addiction, but they can't actually talk about addiction, so it's.
But I was the child of like the say no to drugs like campaign.
Yeah.
Like there was a whole program. It's called Dare.
Yeah, we had a talk about that once.
Yeah, the Dare, and I have the T-shirt still.
Everything is a gateway drug.
Yeah, everything.
Abstinence is the right.
Even
Be
coffee.
terrified.
Coffee is a gateway drug. Say no to all your friends, even if they give you gum. Just say no. I don't think there's more activism now. I think there's more like performative wokeness. Whoa. What did I just say? I don't know. Like I can't think of well, maybe if I think about it a bit more, but I can't think off the top of my head of a show that I watched or have seen recently that I felt like represented activism in a good way. I don't know.
Maybe there's like shows that will talk about anti-bullying.
Yeah.
Like suicide prevention, anti-bullying. Like I'm thinking about 13 Reasons Why, or Euphoria is like the opposite.
Yeah. Oh, I've never seen that.
You know,
but it's supposed to be good.
It highlights and sensationalizes and glorifies all of this crazy behavior that you would have never seen the kids doing on TV back then.
Yeah.
I would have died. If there's a Saved by the Bell episode where they're all getting like
lit
at a party at 15 years old, and then they drive their car and then they kidnap some guy and shoot him, like that doesn't.
Wow. But I wouldn't, that's not like activism. It's not teaching the youth how to be like advocates for something. It's telling you like what not to do, and you don't bully people, or like the consequences of something. Yeah. I feel like there's more diversity and wokeness than there is a call for like being an active citizen.
You know what? That's totally true.
Yeah.
I think a lot of companies and content shy away from that though. Like they shy away from, because to be an activist, you have to take a stand. If you take a stand, you're alienating people on the other side of that. So they stay away from that because they don't want to alienate viewers. They want the widest viewership possible. So they have to talk about difficult subjects, but keep it relatable enough or broad enough that they know everyone's going to unify around, you know?
But I don't know if it's the job of like the entertainment industry on that level. Maybe like films are different, but I feel like on series and stuff, like it's not, is it supposed to teach you how to be an active, like engaged citizen? That's not its role.
Is that what activism's role is?
No, I'm saying entertainment. Like we shouldn't expect that from entertainment.
Yes, but are you saying that activism is trying to be like an active, engaged citizen in society?
Yeah.
Or is it taking a stand for a belief that you have?
Yeah, but it's both. It's taking a stand for a belief you have and then trying to do something about it, even in your own small way or in a big way. It depends on your comfort level and how dangerous it is where you are, you know.
Yeah.
But trying to do whatever you can to advocate for that cause, right?
Yeah. But you're right. I think it's directly opposing capitalism. Like if your aim is to make money, your aim is to go after like the widest audience possible who pay subscriptions to this streamer service or who want to watch the movies from this studio or this actor, then you actually have to like take a stance. The only thing I'm thinking about though is how you have like Dave Chappelle and different stand-up comedians.
Yeah.
Also Middle Eastern stand-up comedians that are able to bring up topical issues that everyone can bond over or complain about or that share in the kind of cultural zeitgeist that's happening right now. But I don't see it outside of that.
That's representation and diversity.
What is?
Like that's what I was saying. And I feel like now there's more representation and diversity, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But and if they say it's something that sounds activisty to you, but it's not like, that's not a strategy of like the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
But like, on the contrary, I feel like most of entertainment is made so we can like chill the fuck out and just accept and normalize things and numb and zone out and distract ourselves.
They take a stand in the show.
Like what though?
Well, I mean, they'll have shows. Okay, I have a great, totally random reference, but not a show, but a movie called Iron Sky. Iron Fist? Yeah. Iron Sky.
Not
Iron Sky. Is it? It's like a satirical film that basically talks about like a world in the future where Sarah Palin in the US became the US president and how that affects the rest of the world. And they have, they go back to the moon on a space mission. And there's like the first Black astronaut on the moon actually finds out that there's like a Nazi base hidden on the moon, on the dark side of the moon. And they're waiting to be like called back to society. And they can't believe how we've come into this place of diversity and inclusion and like how the world's progressed. So they decide to like start a war back on Earth.
Okay.
That like that's a big criticism of the right-wing American like perspective and of you know, this kind of like pseudo wokeness or like weaponized wokeness by the right to get the world to a certain place, and then how the mindsets of the past, and then they end up like working together, and it's a whole. Any industry's purpose is to make a profit in the world of capitalism.
Right.
Well, except nonprofits, but they're not an industry.
They're not really nonprofit though.
But they're not nonprofit.
Yeah.
They want to make more money to
in
reinvest, to pay more salaries, or to grow, or to still expand. So it's still a business. But as long as you're a business, in theory, you're operating under an umbrella of having to make money and having to make more money. And if you have shareholders, they want more money to come back to them. So you have to make more money faster.
Yeah.
So anything that's popular with people, anything that the audience eventually calls for, the industry might have to answer to in order to continue making money.
Right. But that's the performative element. Or maybe performative is a strong word. It's kind of, that's where things that matter are taken and like branded and marketing and packaged in a digestible way for profit.
You as a filmmaker can have something that you want to say about the world, whether it's in fiction form or doc form or whatever. But if you want it to actually go through the industry and be seen by people in conventional ways, you then have to make it digestible in a way and play some sort of game in order for that to be recognized. So like if there's a movie that we just watched, like Goodbye Julia.
Yeah.
You watched that with me. If you watch Goodbye Julia, it's about the Sudanese civil war and the splitting of Sudan. But that movie was made very much with like festivals in mind, with awards in mind. It's not meant to be a blockbuster. So the pacing is different. The way that they communicate the story is going to be different. The length of the film is going to be different. The amount of effort put into the imagery and the symbolism and all of these like artistic elements of film are consciously put in there because they want it to then actually be accepted by festivals and by award entities so that they can get the recognition that they want. If they just made a movie that talked about it, it might not get that same recognition. And so you have to then kind of sacrifice a little bit of your soul in order to have it be seen by the widest audience.
Yeah, I agree. Like there's much more room, or there should be much more room there for experimentation, to bring out like different kinds of issues to light. But there's a reason that it's called like indie. And it's because it's not supported by the bigger institutions. And it's much more difficult to make it happen. It's much more difficult to make it sustainable for the filmmakers, for the crew, for people that work in that space, that have a purpose and want to make an impact or bring an important issue to light. They have to work in that space. And it's very rare for that to be picked up by a bigger institution that can offer more resources, more support, more marketing, make sure it's like goes global. Like, you have to be very, very scrappy about it and hope for the best, which is not what like A-list directors and celebrities and stuff have to do, because they're in a different space. And sure, they can sometimes choose roles that are very purposeful and the stories are important and everything, but I just feel like that's not the usual space where like change happens or where inspiration for change can happen.
But indie isn't even indie anymore. I get what you're saying. So like in the independent space, you can have more room to kind of advocate for change. Very rarely are films now made from a pure artistic space where they hope for the best. You have to reverse engineer the content that you're putting out, whether it's...
I don't know what you mean.
So basically, like, if I make a movie and I just want to make the movie because that, as an artist, it's like my canvas and I just want to make that movie and I don't care who sees it, I don't care if anybody sees it, I just want to make this piece of art. People do that. If you want your movie to be seen by a wide audience, you have to reverse engineer the entire flow of events, because you need things like distribution. Even if you're an indie film that's very artistic, that's trying to push boundaries, if you want people to actually see what you're doing, you have to think about, where are they going to see what I'm doing? Is this going to be something that ends up on a streamer? Is this something that I'm going to push online? Is this something that I want it to be in cinemas?
You have to like look at the end goal and then work your way
and then work backwards. So if I want to make a movie that ends up in cinemas, I cannot make a 3.5-hour film.
I mean, okay.
I can't. It won't get bought. It won't get distributed. It won't get bought. They'll
tell you.
Films
are getting longer though.
They are, but like, only because they're big studio blockbusters that can afford like Endgame to be a 2.5-hour film. And they used to be like Gone with the Wind, 3 hours long with an intermission, because it was a play but in visual format.
Yeah.
But now the attention spans are shorter. We're past the 90-minute movie mark, so they're getting a little bit longer because you need a reason to get people there. But it can't be that much longer. And if it's going to be that much longer, actually, we're going to make it a series, because as a series, we can have 8 hours. So now my movie has become a series, and now I need a lead actress in order to secure funding to film 8 episodes instead of one small movie. And I can't secure funding unless I have the talent. I can't get the talent unless I have the funding. So there's all of these industry-led, money-driven decisions that creatives and individuals have to take into account before they even make the movie. You have to think, okay, well, if this is going to be for, I'm an artist, but I want my art to be recognized. Where does most like indie art films, they go through festivals. Yeah. But in order to go through a festival, you have to research which films have been selected by this festival in the past. But what are the types of topics, movies? Is it going to work for that? I can't make it a blockbuster pacing. I need to make it, you know?
You can fall into the trap then of being too like curating your creativity too much to fit these little checkboxes so that you can like, do you know what I mean? And I feel like that's what turns a lot of creatives off from this space, or they get disheartened, or they feel like they can't compete. Ideally, if you're a creative and you want to create any type of content or make a film or write a book or whatever, the inspiration is the starting point. Mm-hmm. So you're working like from the inspiration to the creation, and then to like whatever happens with it is like an afterthought. If you're thinking marketing and profit and sustainability, then that's when you reverse engineer, but then you can fall into the trap of letting go of a lot of, you know, like it's not a purely creative process then.
No, but it isn't. Why? We live in a capitalist world, a capitalist society. So money is at the center of everything. So maybe making a movie starts, you're right, through an inspiration.
Yeah.
But then to actually make the film, I need money. Right. To either buy the cameras, rent the cameras. Okay, fine, I'm hustling because I have friends and family that have some gear and are willing to pitch in, and I can do it for cheap, and I don't need the lighting, and I'm gonna, you know, I think of the movie Clerks, right, which was a movie that was filmed for $30,000 at the time. It was filmed in black and white because they didn't have the money to do post-production and color correction and to actually like invest in this. It was actually like a question of art, and artistic direction was a question of money. Like, you're responding to the resources you have. You're not given those resources based on inspiration. You're given the resources based on profitability.
Yeah, but that's where we end up with industries that marginalize certain groups of people and certain ideas and certain issues. Yeah. Because they're not like marketable or easily branded and distributed and whatever to like a wide audience. Those are the things we think about when we're doing our own content and our own storytelling. Yeah. Those are like the challenges that we face, because we usually come from like a more creative, inspiration-driven, purpose-driven space and thinking, or like approach to the content and to the content creation and to how we produce and to how we run the company and to the vibes and all of that stuff, as opposed to thinking, is this gonna make money? No, then we don't do it. Like, that's never been the choice that we made.
Because we have the luxury of doing that, but also we're an activist-driven media company with artists in that company, but we're not purely an artistic group of people who are making art and that's it. We do pieces of art. We make sure that the content we put out can look and feel and taste artistic and satisfying and inspiring to people. But the purpose like drives us.
Yeah. So because we get this question a lot, it's one of like, it's usually maybe the second or third question people ask me when they learn that I work with Womena. Yeah. Very curious about, well, how does Womena make money?
We don't.
We don't make money. Oh, it's not funny, but we're laughing.
I know. It's one of those.
It's not like funny, haha. It's like
funny, like crying, full crying eyes emoji. We don't.
But we've come to terms with it.
We have.
Yeah. Okay, it's not haram. It's a serious issue. We don't make money. That's bad. But is it? Why do we have the luxury of doing what we do without necessarily it being sustainable? And by the way, that's not to say that like our goal is not to make money, and it's just that the way that we create content and the kind of storytelling that we do and the market and the way media works, and which is what we're going to get into, makes it very difficult for us and other people in the same industry to make money, but we are still around 10 years later.
Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be that way, let's be honest. It was originally built to be a business and a regular business like any other company that eventually moves towards sustainability and profitability.
Yeah.
It was from its inception a company that I invested in and that my family office was able to support as we built this business. But 10 years later, as we've leaned more and more into impact and purpose-driven storytelling, we've also created a wedge between us and mainstream consumerism brands that don't necessarily want to support companies that take a stand.
Yeah.
They very often will support, well, not very often, but they do support more media companies, more media groups and content creators that make nice, digestible content. But the more you take a stand for something, the more you scare people away. And so we unintentionally pushed a lot of brands away from supporting us because they think that it's not sexy to their audience. They think that there's going to be some sort of backlash because realistically, they don't want to align themselves with our values. Although we think that our values are quite universal. The idea of mutual human respect, equal opportunity, equal rights for women under the law in the eyes of the world, to me seems pretty freaking basic and like normal.
We should be able to all agree on that.
Right?
Yeah.
Surprisingly enough, that is too much. Surprisingly enough, sometimes the content we make is too deep. And very often, they're more likely to come to us for like ideas and then take it and then make
it on their own.
Do it on their own.
We see you.
And then we see you.
We do see you.
And thin it out a little bit. Make it, literally take the exact ideas that we pitch to them, but make it like a diet light version.
Yeah.
And still put it out. Or, you know, we come and they want to connect with us, with our generation, with our values. They say that. And in those conversations, they actually realize that, no, they don't want that. They want fluffy type of content that talks about what this woman had for breakfast today, you know? And they only want her because maybe she's wearing a hijab, or maybe she's got a shade of brown that they haven't featured before, or maybe her hair is a certain type of curly.
But that's the checkbox. That's like, that goes back to like the, you're checking off the list of like representation. And when people hear our name, they're like, oh, you care about women and stuff. You should interview my friend. She like does this. It's like, oh, sure, but like give me more, you know? So also with brands that we've tried to work with in the past, or partners that we've tried to work with, it's like they want to support female empowerment and women empowerment on a surface level. On the checkbox level. Yeah, like part of their strategy, and we've seen a lot of these documents, it's like, yes, part of their actual mandate is to support women in different ways. Mm-hmm. But then when they come to work with us and they see the kind of ideas that we have, the way we want to like curate the content and package it, the kind of people we want to feature, and what we want to talk to them about is not usually what they expect. And it's like, no, that's like too much women empowerment. And they don't tell us that straight up, but then they maybe don't come work with us, or they tend to do like a diluted version of it. And I think it's because we don't create content that's like, we celebrate women, but not in like such an overt performative way. Like showing you, this is a woman. Yes. Therefore, support her. No, we talk about, this is an amazing human being with something to say, or something to live for, or something that you could learn from. They're worth your time. Yeah. So over we want to talk to the women about, if it's like a female, whatever, the first female to do whatever, you know, that those are usually like the sexy things that brands really want. Fine. But when we sit her down, we want to talk to her about other stuff. Like, by the point that we feature her, because we're not like news driven or whatever, so maybe she's been featured in other places before. So we need to like think beyond what the surface level and talk about deeper issues and things that affect either her or her experience or her aspirations. And it's not usually the short, digestible, like easy, quick turnaround content that brands would usually pay for or partner with media companies to do. So we're in this like weird space where it's not like we've never made money. That's برضو يعني, we should correct that. Like we have generated revenue as a company before, and significant revenue. Even as when we did the pivot to only doing media and not doing anything else. So we have a track record of generating revenue, but it's the sustainability of that and the long-term financial sustainability of the company that's always been a challenge, to the point that can we say this? Yeah, to the point that we decided last year to stop trying and to focus on the content. But we can do that, and that's like the luxury and privilege we have that not a lot of other companies and platforms have, because we are backed by investment and one investor, which is you, who's also very aligned with. It's not like you're gonna come and say, Yani, what are you guys doing with my money? Like you also
No, but I know what I'm getting into. And I think there was this very frustrating dynamic that was happening where we were not creating content for clickbait. We were not creating fluffy, easy digestible, viral stuff that was heavily curated and studied because of YouTube algorithms, needs for what they deem viral and so on. And the algorithm was against us when we post the content that we post, but we do it for the purpose. And because of that, we don't hit the numbers that other media companies can hit when they focus on virality. We focus on authenticity. We focus on nuance and context. We focus on real women and the depth of their soul that needs to be shared with the world.
There are other companies that can be compared to Womena that kind of do content around women. A lot of their content and a lot of the reasons that they've grown, either globally or in the region, is because they tend to repackage content that's already out there and just publish it, just to have the consistent flow of every 3 hours you get a post from this company. But it's not really an original piece of content. It can be something that I don't know, this woman or a celebrity or something posted, and they take the pictures and they'll take the info and just put it on social media. Or there's a quote that was said in an event and it's already been featured in 100 different places, but we're going to also put it because we know that it's going to have that viral element to it. So these kind of tiny digestible quotes or text quotes or things like that are not necessarily coming from an interview that you've done with this person. So it's not an original piece of content that you can only find here. A lot of celebrity kind of news or influencer type stuff that is shared by so many different platforms. Now, I'm not dissing that, that's fine, but that's just not, our strategy is not that. It's anything we have posted, or 95% of the things we have posted are always coming from brand new content that we are doing. So we're either going out and filming and doing the interviews, or we're going and writing this article and spending time editing it. And it's a costly process. So we're producing the kind of content that we do at the quality that we do it is high cost. And unfortunately, it also means low
revenue,
profitability.
But that's the thing. Realistically, we have that luxury because I'm the only investor in Womena, because I'm aligned with those values, because we don't have to go chasing and begging for money from brands left, right, and center, which other companies cannot do. And I know that there are journalists who work for platforms who write deeper stories, but those stories don't get seen as much, or that publication might get in trouble for having shared that when the 3 posts before were sponsored and those sponsors don't want to be associated with what was shared. They don't have the privilege of being able to just speak their truth, their mind, their way, and not fear deep consequences for the company. Now, for us, we did have consequences, which is that brands don't think that this kind of depth that we provide is the sexiest thing. And it's not going to get the millions of views or the ticks that they're expecting to get when they're going back to their CEOs and they're like, look, we did a campaign with these influencers or these platforms, and here's the millions of imprints that your content has had. No, but we do have a really dedicated community that we've grown from scratch, who love what we do, who are a part of what we do, and who actually influence the direction that we go in. We do what we do for our audience. We don't do it for brands. And that's... the difference.
But yani, just in case we get called out on this, but we have worked with brands before. That's not to say that we.
No, I know you said that we have worked with brands because we tried it. We tried to make the company sustainable. In that.
No, but I'm saying that we have worked.
Way.
We have worked with brands, and because we've tried and we have generated revenue and stuff. The experience there was that we also are very careful to be editorially independent, as much as possible, like 100%. Like we have very strict red lines as to what we can do or what we can be told to do by an outside party.
Yeah.
So كمان when we do content and we want a brand or a partner to like sponsor it or to partner with us on it, we also demand a lot of like freedom for how it's going to be created, the back and forth of like what the final product is going to look like. Can we hear it before it goes live? Can we see it before it's published? Like things like that. We don't want our editorial integrity to be affected. So we also are maybe a bit difficult to work with.
But okay, so beyond that, like you're talking about the times that we have had a partner come and it gets far enough to where we're like, they're cool with what we're doing, we're cool with them and what they want, and we're making something work. But literally what's crazy is because we're like a value-driven company, a purpose-driven company, we have to be very careful about which brands in the first place we are even approaching or we can even entertain a conversation with, because there are very problematic brands that are out there we cannot work with. Like we have red lines, we have an entire document dedicated.
Secret document.
Yeah. Dedicated to companies that we feel do not align with our values. And one element of this, which kind of touches on another episode we've had, is that we have a document that is based on the BDS list, and that there are some companies that are too problematic for us to be able to take money from. Although they come to us willing to pay us because they want the performative wokeness association with Womena.
The companies that are usually like the biggest institutions and that usually have the most budget to spend are unfortunately usually high on the problematic list for reasons that we can get into maybe offline.
They use child labor, they support genocide, they have, I don't know, animal testing, maybe a part of it that we can't participate
But I mean like the reason that they have these high budgets and they look to a platform like Womena to really want to like give us their money and have us like do content with them is usually because it's a way of like whitewashing or like whatever, what is it?
Saving their
image in the region specifically when like shit gets going in the region. And we've had to say no often to lots of money. And we're not saying that in a way that's like, we said no, like we're not like boasting and like we're special and we're so like much more like virtuous than others. It's just to say that doing this kind of content and aligning with this kind of community makes it very challenging for us as a company, but also our individual values as like founders and as people don't allow us to work with certain partners and brands. And it's also because we are a space that, we talked about this before, and like Womena is like a home, and we built it to be home to a lot of women, and that they should feel represented and they should feel safe and they should feel engaged with our content and with each other through the content and with us and stuff. And so we can't build this home and then make it like unsafe. You know, we can't ask women to come onto our platform to talk about really personal or really important things that mean something to them and then suddenly align ourselves with brands that are totally against their values, especially with things like, for example, an easy example is when it comes to things like Palestine. So we can't really like ask a Palestinian journalist on the ground to join the Womena platform and tell her story and explain to our audience what's happening. And then if she goes back in time or like 3 months into the future, find us aligning with a brand that's like on the BDS list, for example. It's very, very hypocritical. It's very unfair to these women, and we probably will be like shunned by them eventually. And it's also against our individual values. So we have to make those choices of, we would rather have a safe space, an engaged community. We can choose our own inspiration and impact and purpose over making a profit. And not a lot of other people have that privilege, unfortunately, but because we have it, we use it as best we can to our advantage and to the advantage of the community. But it's also meant that sustainability has been very tricky for a small company like ours.
And also growth has been really tricky for a company like ours.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there are things we want to do, we just do not have the capacity to do. Or if we did, would take up the entire team for like 6 months worth of time, to where we're not posting regularly. So we're not anywhere near the algorithm's expectations of a platform that's going to be seen. So we can't afford to do that project or to do this, because we then have to sacrifice. So we're already juggling relevancy and algorithms, and we already have to use platforms that are problematic like Instagram and Facebook and Google and YouTube to be seen and to reach our audience in the first place. But then, okay, we've made that sacrifice at that time. Now we won't sacrifice on these other elements.
But also those, I mean, we exist mainly on social media.
Yeah.
We've been trying to get out of that space a bit.
I exist in the real world too.
Womena content exists on social media, and unfortunately the kind of content that we do is actually like demonetized by the platforms. And this is something a lot of people don't realize, that the algorithms that are built, especially meta algorithms, see women's content and a lot of issues that have to do with like women's health, women's like reproductive health or mental health, or different topics around issues about feminism. They put it in this category that is a very broad and vague category called elections, politics, and social content, which is like, what?
Crazy.
Like, how is this one full category? But I'll just to give an example of a really like, what we thought was like a harmless, for the algorithm, a harmless piece of content that it shouldn't trigger an ad rejection when we're trying to like boost for reach, because it was about the fact that climate change affects women and children most, because they're a vulnerable, marginalized like community in different parts of the world. And that article could not be boosted from the back end of Facebook or Instagram at all. And it kept getting flagged as like under this broad category. So that's like a piece of content that you wouldn't think that's important. And it's actually, the data is out there. Like this, it was based on evidence and research by like UN bodies and stuff. So we're not creating something like, we're not making this up, but it's not something that these algorithms will see as like want to reach a wider audience. So it's demonetized.
Yeah, and it's shadow banned, or it's just hidden, or it's just, it doesn't get that reach. It doesn't get picked up, and people aren't able to engage with it and support us.
Yeah. And same for content like FGM, for example, which is a really big topic in the region, and it's something that we need to keep advocating against. It's also seen as like, it's put under this vague category of like, no, you can't, like it's unsafe. They see it as like sexual content or something like that. So and that applies to a lot of women's related issues. And so the algorithms are also working against us, because that's the only kind of content we do. We focus on women, women's health, women's lifestyles, women's issues. And so there's nothing to break with other platforms. Maybe this is just part of their focus. So there's other stuff that can compensate.
Celebrity issues, fashion issues, beauty issues, maybe a women's issue article. But for us, that's most of what we do. I think I've always had this vision in my head, recognizing that like, capitalism and business is misaligned with purpose. And so you do have to either choose purpose or profit every day with every piece of content in order to survive as a company in general. We got to start a little bit by getting brands to pay us, but in theory, I always wanted it to become a community platform. Like I wanted our community to support us, because once our community makes the repeated choice, that they want us to exist, then we will. When they become members on the YouTube platform, when they subscribe to our podcasts on Apple, when they, subscribe to creators on Patreon, like they're able to really guarantee that these creators who otherwise aren't monetizable by the general stereotypical, whatever world of products, they can guarantee that these people stick around and can continue doing the work that they're doing. And again, like we don't focus on virality, so we don't have the biggest platform, but we have an amazing community, even if it's quite humble, by Instagram standards. I mean, I'm very proud of our community. I think it's very vast, but we still are going to have to find a shift to convince that community that, okay, if you guys really do love the work we've done for the last 10 years, if you really do support the values that we have at this company, like, please help us. You know, like you do have to maybe like pay for some of the content at some point. And even though the world is moving away from paying artists and independent creators directly for their art, like we all listen to music through subscription services, but we don't pay the artists directly. That kind of mindset has to shift. And I think it's about really mobilizing the community to support the people and the purposes that they align with.
What people don't realize is that media organizations, even like bigger institutions, legacy media, global institutions that are in the news and storytelling space, I want to say like 90% of them or whatever, like a majority of them don't make money. This is what people don't realize. So when you get into like, there was the legacy media, which is like things that are, I don't know, like the New York Times or CNN or the Telegraph or, you know, all of these really big institutions that are legacy that have been around for decades that used to have like a subscriber model and an publishing, advertising, print ad model, things like that that no longer really exist in the digital space. Also don't make money.
Yeah, that's so true. Nobody makes money
They don't
anymore.
make money. And also then when you get to like the new media that was supposed to like disrupt that sector and find new business models and new revenue models and like a different engagement with the audience to be independent and sustainable. Also now 10, 15 years into their like lifespan are not making money. A lot of them are VC backed. They're backed by like huge equity funding institutions that require them to have really high growth, really high profitability very quickly. And that's also not sustainable. So they either end up getting acquired or they end up shutting down. Like for example, Vice in the region shut down its offices. Massive layoffs everywhere in this space. A lot of media companies that I've worked with in the past locally that have never made money. They're either investor backed, so this is not like a rare circumstance. And usually the investors have a vested interest in creating the kind of content that publication creates. So it's aligned politically somehow with the people backing it. So in this case, you are the main investor of Womena. We run it together, sure. But if you were a different person with a different mindset, you would easily come and be like, Amira, what the fuck are you doing? Like,
I want to focus on zebras for the next 3 years.
This is not working, do this. And I would have to like, you know, if I want to keep my job, I would those are the kinds of choices we'd have to make. But this is an issue of media monetization all over the world. And people don't understand that. People are used to getting their information and their news and their stories and entertainment either for free or for a very low subscriber rate. And that's not sustainable. So we've seen a lot of different kinds of models where that hasn't worked. And the attempts to disrupt the traditional models also are now proving that they didn't work. And people need to realize that what they're consuming is coming from either a state-funded. A lot of like newspapers, for example, are like in whatever country, they're funded by the state or by people that are very politically aligned with the regimes or the governments, like even in the US.
Bezos buying the Washington Post, for example, like otherwise that was a legacy platform that would have ceased to exist.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 people in the US that run all entertainment, news, content platforms in different forms. And then in the region, it's different because there's still attempts to create new media, but a lot of independent media spaces are either rely on non-profit funding, which keeps you in this very toxic loop of always applying to grants and reporting on the grants that you got and not ever breaking out of that cycle. Or you end up like us, where we're still trying to figure it out, we're still trying to like innovate, or you end up shutting down.
Yeah.
So that's just the reality of the media space, unfortunately, and it's good for people to know that because they don't realize.
We as Womena specifically, like I've lost hope in the market, honestly. I've seen the market crash, the economy is crashing, brands are going bankrupt, they're not spending their marketing dollars. Amazon Prime is shutting down business studios and their offices around the world. Like there's a lack of this funding and there is no new model that has been sustained that can be proven. So why the hell are we still doing what we're doing?
Honestly, because we can. I don't know, like, I wish I had a more eloquent answer.
Now.
Because we can for now, and at one point in the future, to be honest, like, we might have to make one of several difficult decisions.
To take someone else's money, to dramatically cut down the amount of things that we're putting out in order to afford what we're putting out by the money that maybe is coming directly from our audiences, because that's that's the choice that we can make, or launch new product lines like merch to be able, with higher margins, to be able to get some sort of creative revenue that doesn't have to then dictate the editorial strategy and the voice that we have.
Yeah.
And we're going to do our damn best. That's all I can say.
I think our attempt in this podcast is to be very transparent with the audience and our community. If people care about content, they need to know that they're buying content just like they buy their coffee. Like, they need to be able to invest in the kind of content they want to see in the world that represents them.
And that actually in and of itself is an act of activism, I'm very aware when I do contribute directly to creators, I'm doing it because I believe that this needs to exist in the world, because I believe that I really take value from what this person is sharing, or the content that they're creating, or the music that they're making, and I believe that if I can be a small part in that existing, then I'm doing something to make the world a little bit of a more authentic and better place.
Yeah.
Ergo,
support.
If you like this episode, please, like, comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. Let people know that, we're here and that you support us. Anything that you're able to do to interact with what we're creating lets us know that it's being heard and it's resonating, and gives us a little bit more of a boost to continue to do this, because we do this for you guys. We do it for you and you and you.